Hello and happy Thursday, everybody. It's Josh here with On the Wrong Lead, and woof, what a week. I don't know, man. I am exhausted. Started off with obviously all the Derby content we did last week, so there's tons of stuff there. Did a couple of live streams with this gentleman here, Mr. Matthew DeSantis, failed to menace. He came prepared with a glass, and man, Matthew, we had a lot of fun last weekend, huh?
We did. Time flies, man. When we have fun, next thing you know, 5 hours have passed on a live stream. And who knew?
I was talking to somebody today at work, and they were like, "Oh, like, you were off a couple days. Like, how was your weekend, whatever?" And I was like, "I did over 20 hours of content last week," and they are like,
Yeah.
"What is wrong with you?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah, I was like, I took 2 days off work, so kind of maybe like balanced out a little bit, but like." I was trying to explain. I was like, yeah, I was just, I wasn't planning on live streaming for 9 hours on Friday and Saturday, but here we are.
Yeah.
And
It was something else. I'll say that. My favorite story from that weekend actually had to deal with you. And on Saturday, I started the live stream at 11:30 a.m. and you told the story that you woke up, saw me live streaming solo, and thought somebody will join Matthew here in a moment, and rolled over and went back to bed. Woke up an hour later, I was still live streaming solo, and you were like, "I should probably get ready and try to help Matthew out here."
And then by the time I got in, there were like 3 guys in there.
Yeah,
But
then the cavalry showed up. But like, yeah, it was. That was a fun like hour and 20 minutes of just me monologuing, and just talking to my computer and to the people out there in the ether. So, but it was a blast, man. It was so much fun to talk to you and Mark and Caleb. Everybody came on, so it was so much fun.
Hey, I was summoned.
Yeah, I felt like once you mentioned your name, we should tag you in. But go ahead, Mark.
I very much did exactly what Josh did, which was I saw the Trusted Prophets stuff come up, and I threw the stream up, and I was like, oh, Matt's chatting away. I was like, 15, 20 minutes. He's got to have like a whole line of guests up, and he's just maybe doing the first couple of races, those lead-ins, and getting warmed up, and then he'll and then it kept going and going, and I was really close to being like. I was like, I wasn't invited on the stream, but do I just hit him up on Twitter and ask if he needs a hand, like for a breath or something? And then I was like, nah, Matt's got it. He's, he likes to talk to himself for however many hours it was to start the stream. That was, yeah.
But then you came on, and it was fantastic. And you were on, and you were the only one who stuck with me through the Derby, and that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun.
That was not the plan. My plan for the day was not to hop on a stream. It was to kind of sit back, watch the races, and chill. Yeah. And then I was in chat a little bit, listening to you guys talk, because it's interesting to have the banter on between races. Obviously these hour and crazy long breaks, and a little nice to listen to you guys talk through the races. And then I was summoned. So.
You were summoned indeed.
I was summoned. So I guess it brings up a good point though, Matt. What'd you think of the Derby?
Listen, I thought it was really interesting how it played out much the way I thought it was going to play out. It was probably a little faster up front than I thought it was going to be. But I think that's something I talked to Chase Sessions about, that like, is this just the new normal now? Is this just going to be the way derbies are? Because we're breeding 1-turn mile horses, basically. And so there was a lot of speed in the race, probably more than I anticipated. But, Two Phils ran huge, which I thought he was going to run huge. Angel of Empire came running at the end, which I thought Angel of Empire was going to come running at the end. I didn't have Mage. I don't want to take, don't save the applause, because for the people who picked the winner, actually. But, and exactly. And Tap, that's a great sound drop for Tappet Trice, who I was all the way out on and ran like a horse that I should have been all the way out on. So
where was Tappet Trice?
Seventh behind Derma Sotogake.
I know, but I just wanted to use the.
Oh yeah.
Josh just wants to hit the buttons of the sound effect board. No, I was somebody who liked Mage, but Mage was definitely not my top pick. I know I was on the stream with you and mentioning that I
Yeah.
was shocked at the price on Mage.
Yep.
Obviously came out of what's classically considered to be the best Derby prep, which is the Florida Derby. It has been kind of the best for probably 20 years or so now, and I was just absolutely shocked. There's a huge amount of value there. That was a horse that was kind of a steam horse. I thought there was a lot of hype there. I figured that horse would take money off the morning line, not drift like crazy. So, and I had been kind of sneaky behind him. I watched the Florida Derby. I thought that, he sort of, ran out on the run out much past the winner, looked like a horse that would handle the stretch out well.
Yep.
And I thought it had a lot of upside. So I liked him there. Two Phils ran an absolutely monstrous race. It's going to be interesting to see where they end up with him, if they try to classic distance, or are they going to try to maybe cut him back, or sort of how they manage him. But he's going to be an interesting horse to see down the line. Hopefully they Saratoga and we get to see him, and it'll be it's interesting. I think of the derbies I've seen the past few years, I'm more interested to see horses from this derby run back in their next race than I normally am. Normally there's 2 or 3 horses that I go, okay, I'm really interested to see them come back. Normally it's the winner and a couple of others. This one, I'm literally probably, I think 6 or 8 horses that I'm really, it's gonna be interesting to see what they do with Derma, how they manage him out of Japan. It's going to be very interesting to see 2 Phils. It's going to be very interesting to see what the whole Forte situation is. My gut is you may never see Forte actually enter a starting gate again in his career. There's a lot of storylines.
I think there's some interesting, like a horse like Disarm ran huge in 4th place. Like that's an interesting horse. Hit Show runs huge in 5th place. That's another kind of interesting horse. Where are they going to go with Hit Show next? And like, it just feels like there's a lot of horses for that, like West Virginia Derby, Indiana Derby, Ohio Derby, like circuit that might be really, really interesting. And this was kind of my hope from this crop, that we would get a lot of horses that may not command huge siring fees after they retire, but who could become legitimately good graded stakes horses as like 4 and 5 year olds. And I think that's the way it's trending. I'm just keeping my fingers crossed.
Yeah, I'm also keeping my fingers crossed. Going into this derby, I didn't think there was a monster in there, and I still don't think there's a real monster in there. But I'm hoping that this sort of seeds the handicap division for the next couple of years, and we get to see a couple of these really develop, become good horses. I mean, obviously they're already good, but become, real classic handicap style horses that we get to see a bunch and get to, run all the big fields. So it'll be fun. It'll be fun. Yeah. And again, I agree with you. I don't think there's any horse that they're going to, out of this, that they're going to rush off to sire. So,
Andy saying that Ravelli was saying Jim Dandy and Travers on Big
That
Show.
sounds about right. Give him a break off the Derby trail, spin him back. I like that path for him. That's gonna be awesome. We'll get to see him. Hopefully, get to see him a couple of times, which is a horse that I did not like him going into the Derby. He was, he made some sense. I thought he could be, fill out the super, not necessarily the horse that was going to finish second after just ran his eyeballs out. He ran so huge, given the fact that every other horse that was on the pace in the race completely disappeared out the back, and he was the one pace complexion that held on. So, gotta like it.
You do not have to like it, because I needed him in first and like everything. So, I mean, Andy had a couple other good points in here. What do you say? Remember a month ago when we were all like, "Oh, it's Pletcher's Derby to lose," and what a weird week.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Just like with everything, like what a weird week. And the horse deaths, which basically in mainstream media completely took over anything. Any mention of the Derby was like Mage wins. Mage wins by going over the graves of 7 horses on the backstretch. Like, you would have thought that. That there like Mage like went up there and was just like slitting throats on the backside or something. But it's just like what a weird week. And I don't want to spend too much time talking about a lot of the weirdness. I will. The one thing I will say is, if you haven't listened to this week's Timeform US podcast yet, go listen to it. I think both Craig and David, thank you. I'll explain a little bit later why I am the way I am right now. But both of them, I think, gave very impassioned comments about a lot of the stuff going on. They bring up, they bring up obviously the stuff with the horses there, the kind of the coverage behind it, um, and just what probably needs to be done going forward. And you know, it's nice to hear somebody so close and so ingrained in the industry like those two
Yeah.
really take like a good stand. I mean, at some point, Craig even so much as saying, "Who's that Jamie Ness horse that like jumped
Repo
up like
Rocks.
Reaper Rocks?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, "I'm,
Yeah.
I don't believe it. Like, I just don't believe it."
Yeah.
Like, and like you just don't hear people say that kind of stuff, right? Everyone's so rah and everything. So make sure you kind of listen to their Derby weekend recap. I thought it was great. I thought there was a lot of really good discussion in there about some of the stuff that surrounded the Derby week. But it was just a weird week. We get the scratch of Forte that sent me back to bed. And yeah, it was just such an odd week. And like we were saying, just the amount of content that we put out last week. And Matthew, I think you probably did like triple of what I did. So I don't know how you're still standing. But then I followed that up immediately
This.
Sunday. Immediately Sunday, I followed that up by going to a work conference. So I drove up
Oh
to
yeah.
Madison for a work conference, and man, work conferences are a young man's game, man. I don't know. I don't know how. I just don't know. I was with a couple of coworkers, and I mean, like we're relatively close in age. Like, I mean, I think we're all in our 30s, right? And I don't know, man. I just don't know how people do it. Like, I don't know, man. I was like, I was wiped yesterday. I drove home yesterday. I get home, and I eat dinner and I pass out on the couch for like 4 hours, which is worse because I had to wake up this morning to go back into the office, because we had like a quarterly meeting, and it was just like a comedy of errors. I'm wiped. I even told myself, you know what? Like, I'm not even gonna drink tonight because there's just been way too much alcohol in my body for the past week. But I don't know what this is. This has got to be some,
Did
I,
bartender Josh make that for you?
I
Yes.
bartender Josh poured it for me. I don't know if you guys saw the video I put out on Derby Day, which just was a microcosm of like my entire weekend. Was my buddy was gifted this bottle of scotch, and he's not a scotch drinker. He had a real bad experience at his bachelor party, mostly due to me, with drinking way too much scotch, and
You
he's
mean
like
with
not
bartender
drinking it.
Josh?
Yeah. Oh no, that wasn't me. It was bartender
It was
Josh.
bartender
Exactly.
Josh. Yeah.
And so he gifts me this bottle of Glen Rose 12, but it like the bottle's from like 1987. So like
Wow.
I think it was finally like bottled, I think 1999. Right? So this thing's been sitting around for like 24 years. I go to open it, the entire cork just disintegrates right into the drink. So
Oh.
now I'm like, oh well, crap. So like I had a Kettle One bottle that had like maybe like an ounce of liquor left in it. So I poured it out, rinsed it out, and then I proceeded to use a coffee
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 filter?
filter to
Yeah.
strain out all
Mhm.
the stuff. And that's what I'm drinking right now because I feel like,
Did
this.
it taint it? Did it get like the dark color and get a funky
No, it
flavor?
still looks
Or
pretty
okay,
good. No,
okay,
it still looks
good.
pretty good. Like it was there was a couple of little cork particles I think floating in the bottle completely.
Yeah.
But once I put it through the coffee filter, like, came out good. It's really, really sherry
I've
heavy. It's delicious.
I had an old
But
bottle of wine I did that with, but when I put it through, you get sometimes this black funk off the cork that just stains it, and
Yeah.
it
yeah.
doesn't yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it's been a week for me. I'm looking forward to going back to waking up at like 8:45 a.m. for a 9 a.m. start, where I just roll out of bed and log in my computer. But yeah, I see Jay's already got some bias stats coming in here. He says the average length backs on dirt was 1. I'm guessing at first or second call. I'm sure he'll
It's probably at first call.
at
Yeah, I
first
mean,
call. Routes
I
and
think
sprints.
Well, and he also made the mention of 5 wire jobs and turf routes. Yeah, I mean, both surfaces seem to be extremely
Yep.
speed favoring. I know we've already mentioned our good bud Chase Sessoms, the Wolf of Oaklawn, and I know he had a really good. He watched Friday, and we were chatting in a private message, and he was mentioning a lot of like he's like just how biased the surface was. Now, that's one thing, but I think the Derby, on the other hand, I think Mage wasn't super far back. Mage was more mid pack, but the winner there did come from a little bit off it. So, but obviously there's a case of it's a bias. It's not an absolute.
Yeah. And I think the Derby is the exception, really, that proves the rule because of just how nuclear
Yeah.
they're going.
Yeah.
It wasn't as bad as last year, but it was still unsustainable, especially when you see, verifying like just completely drop anchor, hit the rail, and just everything starts falling apart. King's Barnes,
Yeah.
like you said, all those horses go out the back end that were up on the front end, except for Two Fills. So, yeah, it was pretty obvious. But honestly, we should have probably expected that because last year's turf bias at Churchill was pretty speed favoring as well, with a lot of horses on the front end. So, it was, you just try to pick up those biases when you see them and then start playing them as soon as you identify it.
Yeah, I would say, and not to harp on the Derby for too long, but I think Kings Barnes is a horse. I'm very interested in what they do with him because do they wheel him back for something like the King's Bishop? Do they try to cut him back and turn him into more of a sprinter? He's clearly got a lot of tactical speed, and he seems like the kind of horse that I don't necessarily know if he wants to go. He's thrown up speed figures that make him competitive, but he feels like the kind of horse they still haven't quite figured his thing out yet. So
Yeah.
I know he took a lot of money. I was very much against him, and I know a lot, but I know some very, very sharp people who were very much in favor of him. So
Yeah. And if you're looking for Jose Ortiz, he is under a bus somewhere because that is where Spendthrift
ooh,
threw him
that was brutal.
after the race was over. I could not believe I saw that tweet from a gentleman associated with Spendthrift who referred to Jose Ortiz, a 29-year-old grown man, as a kid and said the kid didn't follow the riding instructions. And to my point was like, what were the instructions on
Yeah,
King's
what
Barnes?
were
Then?
they?
If it wasn't to get out to the lead, then what the hell are you doing with this horse?
Yeah.
Like, did you want him to go faster on the front end? Like, what exactly? What?
I mean,
trick
did you
expect
did
him
you want to
to-
rate him for the first time in his career? I mean,
Sure, let's try that in the biggest spot.
exactly. Like I don't that tweet was interesting. I mean,
Yes.
I would imagine sometimes trainers will give jocks we want you to go these kind of fractions, but normally it's we want you in this position relative. I would imagine Jose had the horse where they wanted him relative, they just didn't think he'd have to go so suicidal to get it.
Right.
So it was a very, very odd it was weird.
Yeah. Do you want to know what's funny? Is when I saw that tweet, I was like, you might as well like switch out the word kid for boy.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
like just
Oh,
like
yeah,
let's just go
yeah.
old school Southern, right? And let's just get all kinds of uncomfortable here, right?
Yep.
But yeah, it was such a dumb look. Like I don't know. I think I tweeted something along the lines of like imagine getting mad at a ride on a horse that had no chance to win or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
But
you're right.
but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, unfortunately, and I saw Uncle Sully. He came in just guns blazing, and he said my condolences to Two Phil's finishing third. He actually ran second, but that I would have felt less bad. I think if he would have finished third, I was yeah, that was just like it was like one of those things where
Well,
like
he,
the
he,
more
he oh, I was going to say he should have finished second if Flavian Pratt wasn't an absolute useless waste of a jockey. But go on.
oh, but yeah, it was just I don't know. It was a bit of a gut punch because that looked like a winning move he made at the top of the stretch, and at a certain point,
Was.
like I was like, I can't believe that this horse is going to win, and then I just marked it. I just marked it into
Yeah.
Mage is the horse I had no interest in, and like I don't like I hate to say that a horse got lucky, but man, that race fell apart so hard. He got a little bit lucky that he missed that break, and because I don't think that was
Oh,
the plan. Do you?
I do think that was the plan. I don't think they were ever looking to have Mage aggressively forwardly placed. He's never been aggressively forwardly placed in any of his starts. I think the plan was to be mid pack and make that move.
So
What?
did you read the same PPs I did?
I mean, but his maiden is a complete outlier. When you
Yeah,
look his
it is.
maiden,
Yeah.
it is an outlier because when he starts going to the Fountain of Youth, he breaks slowly and he gets
Look, I'm
hustled
about
up
to
a
make a
little bit
lot
to
of people
sit
mad.
fourth. And then the same thing happens with the Florida Derby. He breaks slowly and he doesn't. I just think that's who he is, quite frankly. I mean,
Yeah.
he's a better version of Tappa Trice, I would say.
I was gonna say I cannot believe Tacitus won the Derby this year. That's what Mage is. Mage is Tacitus. And
Mage
he's
just turn
as
a
a horde,
foot,
I
but,
will never ever bet he's Tacitus. So
I'm gonna pull that sound clip out. That
Yep.
one's gonna be that's gonna be a fun one all summer.
Yep. What odds would you give me that Mage doesn't win another grade 1 all year?
I'll give you 10-1,
You'll give me 10-1?
8-1, 10-1, something like that. Yeah, I think so.
We'll talk after the stream.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think Mage will win before Rich Strike wins. You know, this year's Derby winner will win.
I think
next year.
Rich Strike already won. Did you guys not see Twitter? Rich Strike won today. He might go to an actual barn.
Yeah, he might. He might. He might also just shoot a documentary for ESPN 30 for 30 or something like that. And, and then just go to like John Calipari at the University of Kentucky for name, image, likeness. So I don't know.
So Jay's saying that you have no interest in the horse that ran second to the scratch favorite, who I also hated. So
yeah, I hated Forte in
this
this spot
kind of
too.
like, in fact, the reason I hated Forte so much was because a horse like Mage almost caught him. So it's bad. Like I said, I was just completely wrong. Like I had I thought, I ran second and third, right? I liked Angel Empire, and honestly, I think he came in third, but like, do you think it's wrong to call that kind of a disappointing third, like with the setup he got? Don't you think
Angel of Empire? Oh, I think Angel of Empire ended up for being he should have been second and potentially first if the jockey wasn't a moron. I mean, that was a terrible ride. Flavien Prat was just late, and I mean,
even worse than Kingsbarn?
Flavien Prat was just playing late. That was a poor ride. If you rewatch it, I've sat down and rewatched the Derby more times than I care to admit, just to kind of see who tripped out and sort of what happened. I think the best horse won the race, or the best horse in the day won the race. But Angel of Empire got a very, very poor trip. And,
Mark, you sound a little better.
I don't know. It was funny because I had him before he was cool to have. So you kind of want that horse to run well, so you can kind of pat yourself in the back and say, "Oh, I was right before."
Okay, let's go around. So, Mark, did you have Tappa Trice on any tickets?
No.
Matthew?
Nope.
No, neither did I. Okay, so let's at least pat ourselves on the back. I'm not getting fooled by that quad.
And I take personal pride in the fact that Derma outran Tappa Trice, mainly for our friend Ed DeRosa, who was all about the toss versus boss, Derma versus Tappa Trice. So the fact that Derma outfinished Tappa really cracked me up. So
I also think that Derma probably of every horse in the Derby had the worst trip. So I think Derma, is one of those sneaky, amazing trips where a horse that had a brutal go, ran absolutely, absolutely monster late.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say that Practical Move would have dummied all of those horses. So I couldn't believe that. That was my biggest surprise. Is like I was maybe it was your show, Matthew, where I was just getting dummied because everyone was like, "Man, I'm so mad." Practical Move. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm mad too because I like that." No, no, he was a takeout reducer. What are you talking about?
Yeah, all of us were against Practical Move. I mean, I was probably his biggest defender on our channel. Like, I really like him. I think he's a nice horse at 9 furlongs. I just did not trust the 1.25 mile distance or the trip that he was gonna potentially try to get, because he's got a very specific type of trip he needs, and I just didn't know if he was going to be able to get that in the Derby. But I like him as a horse. I think he's a nice horse. And I was also rooting for Yakteen, like to win with his own horse rather than like
Mm-hmm.
a Baffert interloper. So like the
Yeah.
part of me
Yeah.
was also like bummed that Yakteen couldn't run him. So
So congratulations to next year's Derby winning trainer, Bob Baffert. Suspension is over. He is going to he's going to unleash both that muscle horse meme thing
yep.
and that horse that's got like a fully tailored suit as well.
Yeah.
Both those guys, I think, are hitting his barn up. So,
Jesus.
but Chase has a question. He says, "How come shit's so fucked up?"
I don't know. I don't know, Chase.
I mean, we don't have time. We don't got time to talk about that one, Chase. But we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna take a look at this kind of like middle pick 5 that they got going on at Belmont Park. I remember. So funny story, Matthew. This didn't come up on the stream, and I should have talked about this.
Yeah.
But so after the Derby and being on the high of just winning, I went on Reddit and I posted, "Hey, I did pretty well at the Derby. Like, what else should I bet?"
Mhm.
And Mr. Michael Pellerin was in there, Mr.
Yeah.
Horse Guy Mike, and
Yeah.
he suggested, well, you should look ahead to the Man of War Day. Take a look at Belmont Park on Saturday, and so I shout out to Mr. Horse Guy Mike out
Horse
there
guy
who
Mike. Good guy.
yeah, it was just really funny. Like he was like one of the few people I remember like replying to like my first ever horse racing Reddit thread. So it was just pretty funny. But race 4 here, we're going to be going the 1-turn mile and 16th that we have here at Belmont Park on the dirt. And it looks like I think your Moorline favorite is the 1 mandatory in this spot, but you got a couple of horses that it's kind of a flat line, right? You got 3-1 on mandatory, 7-2 and From Another Mother, 7-2 on Little Bro Coop, and then you got oh my God, why can't I not read that word? What's that word there, Matthew? Number 3,
Colloquy.
colloquy. There we go. And Bread Bandit 5-1. Magical Ways 8-1, and then you got a couple of horses here at double-digit odds. Matthew, as our guest, I'll let you go first. What did you like in this race?
Yeah, this is a really tough race, and this feels like a very spready type of race. Or if you have a strong opinion, good for you. I mean, I don't have a huge opinion in this one. I see mandatory and From Another Mother and Little Burrow Coop as all pretty close to each other. Mandatory obviously coming off some solid performances the last 3 times out. Was disqualified last time, but crossed the wire first. Definitely makes a lot of sense. He'll be up on the lead, and I actually like that it's a 1-turn mile and a 16th for him. 2 turns, I would have been a little bit more worried, I think. But I think From Another Mother is an interesting horse, the 5 for Raymond Handel, who of course is the trainer for Promiser America, who won the Gazelle. Is a horse that's improving the last couple of times out and has Rosario aboard and should sit a pretty nice trip. I mean, should sit kind of presumably behind the initial speed of mandatory and potentially the 3 horse as well. So, it should be sitting, either kind of right behind or right on the pace and should get a nice enough trip and has been kind of slowly improving. I know lost by 5 lengths to mandatory last time out, but had a super wide trip that day and is now freshly gelded. So I don't play that gelding angle very much, but it is one just to make note of. So I don't know. I kind of was on the 5 and the 1 here as kind of logical plays, I think.
Yeah, I thought mandatory the 1 makes a ton of sense, right? Like, but
Yeah.
the thing, if you watched Belmont's today, rail speed was really, really good. You can make a pretty good argument that on dirt you had, a bit of a golden rail. But the horse is 1 for 16 lifetime. Like this, this horse is
Yeah.
probably going to go off your favorite, and that's like that's just the worst sort of money burner, terrible play kind of angle you could ever have. Can the horse win? Sure. Would I want to leave the horse out of a pick 5? No. Is it a horse that I get really excited about betting? Definitely not. Not at all. And honestly, I think the pace complexion is a little interesting in here. Mandatory is definitely your rail speed, but I actually think Magical Ways the 4, the Jacobson horse, is also a horse that's shown a ton of speed. And I think there's an argument that there may be a pretty good setup from somebody coming a little bit more off the pace in this race. And I think, and it sort of becomes that's how it looks on paper, but of course this is Naira, so you never really know what's actually going to happen. The horse I kind of ended up as I felt like I wanted a little bit of a newer face here. I wanted a horse that had some sort of asterisk, maybe barn change or somebody who has equipment change, something an interesting outsider, and I ended up on the
Drug
7.
overages.
Drug overages, one of those things. Little Bro Coop,
Yeah.
for Jose Cameo. It's a horse that, has enough tactical speed to be forwardly placed, but I would imagine Pratt hopefully is smart enough to kind of sit off the pace here, watch what develops in front of him, not go suicidal and be that sort of first run type. And Jose Cameo is hitting at 26% first off the claim with a positive ROI. Horse that they thought was a turf horse forever. If you cross all those turf races off and
Mhm.
because they really don't matter. I think we've realized after 9 tries this is not a turf horse, and you pay attention to the last 3 starts, form really improves quite a bit. So I think Little Bro Coop is that kind of I don't know what I call it, cute outsider, outside face, fresh face, whatever it is in this field. And if you were forced me to pick a top or forced me to make a top pick, it would be the 7.
I appreciate you sticking your neck out, Mark, and picking a 7-2 on top.
I went for big price. You know me.
Just kidding with you, Mark. No, I did think this was a tough race. I pulled up the optics plot briefly here, and you got a speed rate of 88 here, which is insanely fast. Generally anything above like a 35 is seen as kind of like a fast pace. So the fact that this has got an 88, they think that they're going to be going fast early. Now, this is always a tough this is it's always a tough question, right? The best horses in this race are going to go fast, and they're going to go fast early, but they're also the best horses. You see this big old square here from another mother, and like if this square was like maybe a little bit further back, you're like, oh well, this horse is going to close into this fast pace. Um, I kind of went back and forth, and then I took kind of Mark's kind of comments under advisement a little bit because that's always in the back of your head, right? What are you going to do? Uh, like when there's all the speed and just one jock decides to take back. Um, so I landed on From Another Mother as kind of my top choice in here. Does have tactical speed, but you know, I do think with Joel aboard it might get pulled back a little bit or not exactly sent so much. And I think that at least looking at the horses in this race, this horse has got the best late pace out of all of them. So if the track's playing fair, and we do get a little bit of pace up front, I think that this is going to set up nicely for the 5. I do have 2 other horses in this race I like a little bit less. I have them marked as B's, and it's kind of assuming we're getting a fair track and all the speed's still in here, and there's a chance that they get stupid on the front end. I like the 6 Breadman, and I like the 3 Colloquy here. Um, and I am just once again I'm just sitting here and I'm looking for the horses that are becoming late. I'm actually really surprised that Mark doesn't have the 3 because I have never seen Mark may like Tom Morley horses more than I like Larry Ravelli horses. So the
Could be
fact that he
accurate.
didn't have the fact that he didn't have this 3 just like astounds me.
Oh, it's a B.
Okay, well, but I thought both these horses, Colloquy coming off being claimed first off the claim, 20% there, sat just off that pace, and then one pretty handily by 3/4 of a length there. And I think that the figures fit at least on the Briz scale. Um, Obviously From Another Mother's got that huge maiden score, a maiden fig at Aqueduct, but that Aqueduct track is just really weird. So we'll be interested to see how the 5 takes to the Belmont track. And then obviously the 6 is kind of reminds me a little bit of your horse, Mark, where they were running this horse in turf races at Belmont, Saratoga, Aqueduct. Then John Terranova claims the horse. He runs it in the claiming race, runs pretty well on dirt, and they just keep on sending this horse to the dirt. And had a nice claiming win. At Aqueduct, comes back here again, gets claimed off of Randy, and now Robert Falcone's barn here. Won first off the claim, ran in an allowance, and I see 2 stars next to the jockey's name, and I look at the name, and I'm like, all right, we will absolutely just draw a line through that one because we got Manny Franco now. So I
She
think you,
almost had a win. She almost had a win today. She was close.
yeah.
And I will say that I know you're talking about Breadman here. Falcone, if you watched the back end of the Aqueduct meet, he was winning everything that wasn't tied down. His barn was hitting at like almost 40%, 36, 38%, something crazy like that. So I think you're getting, I don't hate Breadman here. I think you're getting a
Yeah.
barn that's definitely firing on all cylinders right now. And it's interesting, I think, that Manny ends up here versus getting on the 3, who he had a win on last out. Tom
Mhm.
Morley, if Tom Morley with his best stock tends to go to Javier Castellano, and I chase that angle all the time. He also uses Manny quite a bit on his good horses. I find it really interesting that Manny ends up on the 6 Breadman, and honestly, that's the reason that the 3 for me is a B. I don't understand why that respective jock
Yep.
is up, but I think it does make the your 6 a little interesting.
It's a little funny that the 3 was claimed off Falcone, and that's who Manny was riding, and then
Yeah.
now he's riding the
Yep.
Falcone horse. So
The other thing I found interesting in this race, and it was just I was just digging into because a lot of these horses are first off the claim or second off the claim, and I was looking at the number 4 Magical Ways, and horses being claimed from Bill Mott are winning at a 27% rate first time out.
Really?
Yeah,
That's a
and
crazy stat.
which is exactly a very high number and not one that I expected to see because typically when you see a horse leave a really good barn, you go, well, that's usually a play against, or, I usually play against horses like that are going down to I don't want to say a lesser barn, but it's certainly a smaller barn. And, but yeah, that Mott number just really shocked me when I saw it. So
yeah, you would
Wow.
expect that out of like a Chad Summers, not.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
I wish I could hate somebody as much as Andy Serling hates Chad Summers.
dude, Andy Serling hates a lot of things, though.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
like,
man, did you remember that one time
yeah,
on
I
Talking
do.
Horses,
Yeah,
and
that
he
was
pulled like this real specific stat about claiming off Chad Summers and posted it as like the stat of the day. Oh, I love it. I love it.
Oh, and he was talking
Uh,
a lot of smack back and forth with Summers on Twitter, and yeah, Andy is nothing if not opinionated.
but we spent a good 30 minutes talking about what a great guy he is on the live stream over the weekend.
Yeah.
So, there's that.
Andy's one of those
Anything?
people who is very sort of, I don't know if you want to call him Hollywood, maybe. The presentation on media content is very different than Andy in real life. And
Sure.
Andy in real
Yeah.
life is a very nice, very wonderful human being. He's
Yeah.
a really good guy, honestly. But on, media, he is a very different critter.
Anything else we want to talk about in this race?
Not
No,
really.
I think it's a hard race. It's a pretty wide open race to
Yeah.
start the pick 5, and it's one that, yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what the board does because I'm really interested to see who ends up in the favorite in that race.
Yeah, we'll move on to the feature of the day. The Grade 1 Man of War here, going a mile and 3/8 on the inner turf here. And unfortunately, Uncle Sully, I do want to point out, I don't have anything here next to Channel Maker. I'm not getting fooled again like I did last time, where I said I wasn't going to bet Channel Maker, and I absolutely bet Channel Maker because it started rating. That's not happening this time. All right, that is not happening this time. But yeah, you have a Godolphin Charles Appleby horse shipping in to try and steal some of our American money here. Warren Point here, coming off a couple of wins and then a second in a Group 1 overseas where he lost to Russian Emperor. And I for some reason I thought this said he just barely beat Butthole but that's Bolt Hole. So I don't know. But Frankie Dettori sees fit to ride this horse here. We haven't seen him for a bit. There was a much Much Ado About Nothing about him coming to the United States to get a Derby mount, and then he said, "Deuces, I'm gonna go ride in the Guinea 2000 instead of the Derby." So, but yeah, I don't know, Mark. We talked briefly before the stream. I haven't seen any of the twos races yet. But what did you kind of think of the two here in the spot?
Well, the two's an interesting player here, and I think just given the fact that this is a Charlie Appleby shipper, Charlie Appleby's horse has been winning at 44% in North America the last year. Everything he sends over is live, and I think this horse gets absolutely bet off the board. I think this horse takes a ton of money, and you're probably more likely to get sort of 4 to 5 kind of range on Warren Point. I think this horse just takes a ton of money. Can the horse win? Of course. It's an Appleby horse. If it's Appleby, it's definitely live. I just think that the horse is going to be massively overbet based on his chance of winning. He's a horse coming over from I ran in Doha last out in Qatar. And I realize it's not quite Dubai, but is there still a Dubai bounce sort of factor there? If you look at this horse's 12 furlong races, horse has gone 12 furlongs 3 separate times. Has won on synth going 12 furlongs, but but those races are definitely not Warren Point's best races. Warren Point's best races are going 10 furlongs. So I wonder if this is just a little bit further than Warren Point really wants to go. Is he good enough to win in this field? I don't know. Maybe. He just doesn't end up being my top choice. I think you have Red Knight in here, who's a super interesting player. Obviously needs some pace to fire into. Even though his last few, he really hasn't gotten that pace, and he still kind of brings his A game. Horse that still as a 9-year-old seems to be pretty darn competitive. So I thought Red Knight was a pretty interesting player in here. I know Josh is going to kind of wax poetically about Verstappen, so I'll let Josh do that. But the horse that I thought was the most interesting in this race is the other maker, and that is the 8 Value Engineering. Value Engineering in here is a horse that, if you look at his races, and I don't necessarily love the jock change from Jose Ortiz to Manny Franco, but he seems to be a horse that kind of fires every other. And this is that sort of every race. He's proven he can get this trip in the past. Horse that's done very well at Belmont. He's 2 for 6 lifetime here. And if I'm going to get anywhere near that morning line, he's definitely got tactical speed. I would imagine somebody like a Channel Maker or Verstappen end up on the lead. I think Value Engineering can sort of sit behind that pace and kind of get rolling late. This should be the every race. I would imagine all systems are go, and Value Engineering at 12-1. Yeah, sign me up.
Yeah, it's funny. Value Engineering is a horse that you spoke about this every other race dynamic, and I always feel like I'm on the wrong side of Value Engineering when he runs that every other race. And so I'm very gun shy to use him in the spot, but I agree with Mark that at 12-1, he presents fantastic value and potential upside, because if he runs his race, and if you notice the last 2 times he's run well, he sat relatively close to the pace. He sat much closer than he has in the 2 times that he's not performed particularly well. So if he can sit in more of a stalking trip, if he can sit 3rd or 4th, I do like his chances in breaking from the outside. I imagine they're going to try to make a little bit of effort to get him up a little bit closer to the pace. Listen, there was an insane statistic last time when Modern Games, and I forget the other Appleby horse that lost at Keeneland recently, but it was Modern Games and another one of his horses lost, and it was the first time ever that Charlie Appleby lost back-to-back races in North America. That's insane. So when you talk about Warren Point, I agree with Mark that he's going to get bet down to just a stupid level, and I think he is the most likely winner of the race, but I'm not going to use him in all I'll use him maybe in a sequence, but I'm not going to, use him in a vertical in any way or do a straight win bet. If I could get 9-5, then sure, but I don't think I will. And so, Josh, you and I are on Team Verstappen here together, because this is a horse I absolutely loved last time out. And Caitlin Free, shout out to her. She has been stumping for this horse for a while and was all over this horse. She really believed this horse kind of found an extra gear and found what it needed when it went to Turfway Park over the winter, and it seems like it found what it needed at Turfway, and he has just done nothing but improve. And the only time he's lost is to a runaway winner in Wolfie's Dynaghost, who is dynamite on synthetic. And so that performance in the Elkhorn was just so impressive. And you're getting 6-1 on the morning line. And I think you'll get every penny of that, if not more of 6-1, because I think horses like Red Knight and Value Engineering and Warren Point are going to take a little bit of money. So I think, Verstappen makes a ton of sense in this spot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have to say anything else. I'm, there was some thinking that maybe this was just a synth horse. Rattled off 2 really good wins there on the synth, and then ran second to Wolfie's Dynaghost, who is definitely a synth horse.
Yes.
We confirmed that this past week.
That's been confirmed now.
all of us loved him there, and then we went, oh yeah, he's just a centaur. So
yeah, but that Elkhorn was very impressive. I think it was a little bit slow on the front end there, and he still managed to just gobble up a ton of ground and win by a head over a really, really nice horse in Red Knight. Red Knight's a really, really nice horse. Red Knight won the McKnight earlier this year. Obviously had a really big win in the Turf Cup last year at Kentucky Downs and at Colonial as well. So, this is a really accomplished horse, and the fact that Verstappen just kicked away, and held him off. It was really, really gutty performance, and so I like Verstappen here in this spot. The other horse I do like in this spot, and it's another kind of like mid-priced, trying to get around that too, is a 6 Soldier Rising, and this is another horse. This is a horse that's 1-2-1 here at Belmont. Does have a win over the Yielding Turf. We're going back to 2021, but ran third by a half length to a couple of nice horses and Serve the King and Channel Cat. Just keeps on picking up checks. Maybe tailed off a little bit at the end of last year in those two races, but Christophe Clement fires off the layoff. Coming in here, I think, looking at the optics plot, it seems like it's going to be kind of a pretty slow pace, and that coming in, that coupled with Naira, it doesn't really surprise anybody.
And they go 52-4 for the opening half. Yeah, no, I know.
But if you kind of look at the way the plot kind of sets up, it looks like the 6 has got the best late kick on optics here. I know the 2 isn't on here, so I'm kind of maybe I'm making bad assumptions based off of incomplete data, but I thought of the American horses that are still here. I thought the 6 does have a bit of a late kick. I think getting back to this Belmont surface where he had a lot of success, I think is going to be good. So I really liked Soldier Rising in this spot. I liked Verstappen. Depending on how my ticket looks, there might be, I might use the 2 here. You can go ahead and you can call a defensive alert on me here, but I don't. If I'm not playing the 2, Red Knight's a nice horse, but I don't know. I think there's going to be a little bit of a fade on here. I think a horse like Verstappen or Soldier Rising might have a good shot to at least maybe win at a bit of a price here. I know 6-1, 5-1 doesn't necessarily get the juices flowing, but we'll see what prices 2 ends up being, because if he's as hyped up as Mark kind of made it seem, he might be, I don't know, he might be 4 to 5 in the spot. So
yeah, one of the things I was interested in with the 2 was that he doesn't bring over William Buick. You don't get Jamie Spencer, thank God, and you but you get a European rider, right? You get a Euro jockey who understands how to ride these Euro turf horses. And I thought that was just worth noting. That is, like, instead of getting like Johnny Velasquez, or instead of getting, somebody, in the American colony, he gets Frankie to ride this horse. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if there's a reason to that. I've watched a few of his races. He's a very headstrong type of a horse. So, to Mark's point, he does maybe sometimes wear himself out if he's going to go that extra half or more full furlong. So that is something to keep in mind with Warren Point for sure. But I think it's noteworthy that Frankie was the choice instead of somebody else.
You mean Frankie, the washed up Santa Anita jock?
yeah, who was
Hollywood
winning like a
Tory.
20% rate out there. Just Jesus. That tells you everything you need to know about that jockey colony. That Frankie just like goes out there and it's just like, hey, maybe I won't retire. This is actually pretty fun playing, winning like 25% of the time at Santa Anita.
The one jockey colony? Yeah.
Yeah.
I did say Jay mentioned he's like, okay, when Channel Maker doesn't go, the 7's going to be on the speed, and he's going to be 20-1 on the morning line. You guys look at the 7 at all here?
I just don't see a way in which the 7 ends up on the lead. I'm not against the 7, but what makes you think that the 7 with flow of all jocks up goes to the lead? Like really? I mean, I think if for whatever reason Channelmaker misses the break and doesn't go, then Verstappen ends up inheriting a really comfortable lead, and then I would like Verstappen a lot more. And I'm not necessarily against Verstappen. I just don't see how Strong Tide ends up in the lead here. I mean, Cohorse is coming out of a bunch of 2-mile races. Like this is a cutback for him.
Yeah, yeah, very similar. I'm not completely against the horse, but I just don't personally see it, and I don't see him necessarily on the lead in this spot. I mean, if you're looking at that like February 25th performance from 2022 at Oaklawn when he gate wired an allowance, that was on dirt, and that was really the only time the horse has really ever done that. I mean, there was one time back in 2021 he did that at Churchill, but like by and large, this horse sits third, fourth, and I think that's kind of where he's going to be sitting again.
In the slop on dirt. I mean,
exactly.
There's a bunch of asterisks there.
Oh, yeah. Totally.
All right, let's move on here to Peter Pan, going a mile and 1/8 here for 3-year-olds, and you got a couple of horses that showed up at some earlier preps. I mean, Slip Mahoney ran in the Wood, and then Classic Catch also ran in the Wood. You got Gold Soldier Go here, who apparently was in the UAE in Meydan.
He was.
He was.
So he's shipping in here for this. And then you got Doug O'Neill, who's sending over the third place finisher from the Sunland Derby. And then you got the 8-5 favorite at Brad Cox horse that won an optional claimer. So that might tell you all you need to know about this field.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually landed on the 8 Henry Q, and Hollywood Tory aboard here on Henry Q, and I mean maybe the 9 should show some speed, but I mean the 8 might just have that, might just be the speed in the spot. Coming out of Todd Fincher's barn, going into Doug O'Neill's barn. And I don't know, this horse interested me a lot. That Bird Derby was just a humongous effort. He went up against some tougher horses, and obviously came up a little bit short. But I don't know. I don't really feel like there's much in this race. So I don't see why a horse like the 8 can't get there on the lead and go the whole way. If I had to have a second choice, it would probably be the 5 Classic Catch here, and that's just kind of going off. Hey, maybe he just sits off that pace, and he gets Irad aboard again, who rode for his last win. Anytime a horse switches off of Trevor McCarthy, much like Chad Summers, I think you upgrade, since McCarthy is the Chad Summers of jockeys. I thought the 5 might be a little bit interesting here as kind of an off the pace horse. But me, I'll bet the speed. So I like the 8 Henry Q in this spot. But Mark, where did you kind of land?
No, this is a really interesting race. I mean, Peter Pan is historically the prep for the Belmont Stakes, and normally the winner of this will take a shot. It's the the local prep, and it's always interesting to see those horses come out of this race and go into the Belmont. I love David Aragona. I think he does an amazing job overall creating morning lines. He's probably the best in the business. The morning lines in this race are an absolute joke. There is no, I mean, maybe Bishop's Bay goes off at 8 to 5, and somebody knows something I don't, but I don't know why. Why do you want Bishop's Bay? I mean, I realize the race win streak, but what on this horse's form merits besides Flo and Cox? Merits this horse being 8 to 5. It just makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. I actually ended up on two prices in here. I'll start with my second choice, and that is Go Soldier Go, who the first time in the Todd Pletcher barn, horse was running in all the Dubai preps. The Emirates Airline was a nice race. The I'm not even going to try to say the name of it, stakes was a fairly nice race. Time form really, if you do the time form conversion on those dirt races, they fit well with what others in here have done. You can make a pretty good argument that they were not as classy of races. But and then if you look at that UAE Derby, I didn't think that was a terrible effort. When you figure one of those horses ended up in the Kentucky Derby and ran pretty darn well in Derma, and Continuar made the field, and I think what they decided not to run. I think Gold Soldier Go is an interesting, just from the argument that Todd doesn't really spot his horses poorly. So he's bringing this one over. I would imagine this horse has been in his barn for, they've at least gotten a couple of works across the surface. So he should know what he has. And if he's taking this kind of shot, I would imagine he thinks fairly highly of the horse. So I thought 8 to 1, with Flavien Prat getting a leg up for Pletcher, I thought Gold Soldiers Go was a pretty interesting player in here. And my top choice is actually a maiden breaker last out, and that's the horse on the rail, the one.
Yes, I'm so glad you're talking about this one, Mark.
So this is the kind of horse that ticks about 6 different red flags for me, as I tend to hate these kind of horses, these maiden breaker last outs who throw a flashy figure. But this is a horse that didn't run terrible, in December and January. Jock change in March, Javi gets up, and I thought that performance was extremely impressive. Fastest last out time form in the figure, fastest time form figure period in the figure in that race. You're getting a horse that ran a 118, has pedigree that says the stretch out to, here should be, hit him right square between the eyes. Arrogant on top, tap it on the bottom. Really kind of cool pedigree, and a horse that really seems to be improving. Small market barn, but I tend to like when Javi gets up for those kind of trainers and those kind of connections. Pretty lightly raced 3-year-old horse that's definitely improving, and you're going to give me 10 to 1. I think this horse, I mean, again, I'm not the one making the live odds, but I think this morning line gets cut at least in half. I would imagine this probably ends up your third choice or something, at more like that 5 to 1 kind of range. I thought Arcangelo made an absolute ton of sense in here, and really, really liked the horse. And again, this is not the type of horse that I normally get behind.
Yeah, so it's funny. I kind of split the difference between you two because I like the 5 and the 1. Those are my top 2 choices. And I'm also completely against Bishop's Bay. That morning line makes no sense to me either. I love David as well. He's the best in the business, but that morning line makes no sense at all. And this is a horse that actually regressed from a speed figure standpoint and has never won the way a 1 to 2 or 2 to 5 favorite should win. He barely wins. He barely gets there, and I just don't love that. And now, granted, he beat First Mission first time out, and obviously First Mission's gone on to probably be second choice in the Preakness next weekend, and win the Grade 3 Lexington. So very good, but that allowance optional claimer race was not that great stretching out. So I'm passing on him entirely. I really like the 5. The 5 makes a lot of sense for Pletcher at 9 to 2. You're getting the blinkers on, especially after what we saw last time, just falling so far behind in that Wood Memorial, but still making up a ton of ground and finishing 5th that day in a 12-horse field. Horse is 2 for 3 winning at 9 furlongs. I think that's noteworthy. Broke its maiden at this distance, so I definitely like that, and just think this horse makes a lot of sense. And then, to Mark's point, the 1 just jumped off the screen at me as well. I mean, increasing speed figures, jumped up again off the layoff. I know just broke its maiden, but ran against horse we were kind of dogging a little bit earlier, but ran against Kingsbarn second time out. I mean, was it placed in solid maiden special weight races leading up to this, and should be able to get away from the gate perfectly fine and position himself okay. The pedigree is great. I mean, the barn, you're right, is not particularly noteworthy. I think 0 for 7 at Belmont, 1 for 19 in stakes races, so it's not overwhelming, but from a speed figure standpoint and from a class standpoint, I think the one at 10-1, if you can get anywhere near that, makes a ton of sense to use. Even if you think, Mark's crazy for liking him up top, he's a foolish horse to leave off your vertical exotics for sure, because he's going to run a really big race, I think, on Saturday. So 5-1 for me in this one.
Yeah.
So
Any concern, Mark, that your 6 is going to be carrying 5 pounds more than that, like everyone else in the race?
no, I'm not a big weight person. I know a lot of people get more obsessed with 3 pounds here or there. I just to me that's just not a major factor. I know sometimes it does, but weight for me is more important. Maybe in the slop or with horses that are lone speed types that are trying to get a longer distance. Those kind of things. I just don't think it. I don't think it's a major thing in here.
Josh, I wonder, how do you think the 7's going to play in all this? Because you mentioned Henry Q being kind of lone speed potentially, or the speed, but the 7 feels like, from a time form standpoint, the 7 actually has better earlier pace figures than Henry Q. And so, it's something where if you start getting the 7, the 8, and the 9 all up there pushing, then I definitely want to use horses that are going to be sitting behind that pace rather than on that pace.
Yeah, and this is something that we looked at a little bit last week. This is one of these races where the plot just does not, like, it doesn't line up, so it's a little bit unreliable.
Mm.
I kind of like that 8, being above the par line, sitting there with the best kind of turn speed there, the first and second call speed. The 9 being down there in Q3 is kind of interesting, because it's a weird spot for that horse to kind of plot out here. It's kind of like the horse has got early speed and then, like, relaxes in that second quarter and then has got a bit of a late kick, which can win, but they just, I don't know, they just don't often win. So it's just kind of a weird spot for where the 9 was on the plot, which is kind of why I tossed it, especially when I saw the line. There
Mm-hmm.
is a price, I think, for the 9, but the price for the 9 is basically the price you're getting on the 1 right now. I think
Mm-hmm.
something like 8 to 10 to 1 or something like that. But yeah, like I said, I kind of like the 5 sitting here as a big Q4 square here, thinking thinking that might be your kind of off the pace horse. But I mean, the 8's this tiny little square. The 7 actually does, I think, plot out a little bit well. And I know Charles B. He's a fan of optics, and he's saying that the little circles in Q1, especially at Churchill, they were doing some work. So yeah, so that 7 plots out pretty well. And honestly, I don't think the 1 plots out that bad either, especially if you're getting a bit of a price. It is a small little smaller circle. I mean, Slip Mahoney. Do you think we've seen enough of this horse, the 2
Mm-hmm.
horse? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I would think somebody like a Slip Mahoney, and honestly, I know Matt liked Classic Catch, but I think I've seen enough of Classic Catch as well at this point. I think to me, both those horses need to take a pretty big step forward. And again, sometimes that does happen. These are developing 3-year-olds, and maybe they do take that big step forward. But I think I've seen enough of both of them
I
personally.
mean, there.
It's funny with Classic Catch. For me, it was more of just like starting to cross horses off the list in this race. I mean, this is just
Okay.
not the strongest edition of the Peter Pan, to be
Yeah,
honest. And so you're just like, all right, well, I don't really like this horse. I can't really like. I see where you're going with Go Soldier Go. I can't get there on a horse shipping over, but I get it. You're getting a price at least a little bit, so I get it. But like, there were a lot of horses I was just drawing lines through, and I was like, okay, well, I got to pick a winner somewhere in this race. Like, where's it going to come from?
yeah.
But I agree with you. There's a few horses that are just like, oh, well, they've been knocking around a little while, even though they're 3 years old. I think going with a new face is not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess with Slip Mahoney, I mean, I'm not going to try and talk anybody into a 4-1 shot, but all right, you see, I mean, it's arrogant. So she should have handled the slop. Finished second to raise Kane here. Um, the figure came back a little bit slow, but I mean, he got just absolutely obliterated by Race Kane, and so I don't know. Let's say we cross this one out here, right? And then you got the Aqueduct race, and it looks like he was bumped hard and he checked. I haven't seen the replay, but let's take the comments for face value here, and we cross the line through this one. I mean, that progression looks a lot better, doesn't it? Like I know we're crossing out the last two races, but it took a little bit to break a maiden, and which is a little concerning because Brad Cox isn't necessarily one that it's not like a Shug or a Bill Mott where maybe it takes 2 or 3 races for him to kind of light bulb to turn on, but I mean progressing nicely going into the New York preps, and
But it's Cox with Joe Rosario up. The horse probably takes money. Where is the price that you're willing to say, oh, geez, that horse is interesting? I mean, and I think that it's the same problem for me with both Slip Mahoney and Classic Catch, in that I think they're going to be substantially overbet relative to their chance of winning the race, and that's my biggest issue with both of them.
Mhm.
I want a fresh face. I want an outsider, given the fact that I just think they're okay. Could they both win? Sure, of course. There's a scenario where either one of them could. I just think that they're going to be way overbet relative to those chances of happening.
The other thing I'll say about this race is, Mark, you brought up this is usually a prep race for the Belmont. Yikes! If this is the prep race for the
Yeah,
Belmont, like
yeah.
last year we had We the People at least, who had generated a little bit of buzz coming out of this race. But yikes!
I will say though, I mean, there's a couple Arrogates in here.
Yeah.
They have that sort of pedigree where they can stretch out and get the distance. Is there a chance that somebody, again, maybe somebody like
That would be a
Arcangelo.
great story too. Yeah.
Exactly, be a
Yeah.
really cool story. If that horse can stretch out, get the distance, put a big performance in, maybe you have that horse. So I
Yeah.
don't want to bash. I don't want to bash the race until we've actually seen it. There are a bunch of lightly raced horses in here who have every right to improve.
Yeah.
no, but I will already bash Joel Rosario's ride on the 2 in that race. So um race 7 here, maiden claimer, state bred, going a mile and 16th on the turf. If you've ever like wanted to read, like look at a race and just immediately be like, yeah, that's a spread race. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
40K maiden claimer going a mile and 16th on the turf for state bred New Yorkers.
This is my
Y-
moneymaker, baby. This is where I love these types of
I
races.
do too. I love to play these. Yeah.
I have 4 horses written down, and I like honestly like I was looking at this race before, and I literally couldn't I I have them all as question marks, but I couldn't settle on a horse I actually liked, so I guess they're all A's. I'm not really sure. Like it was just kind of a weird race here. I want to start with the 7 tunnel vision in the spot. Um, Sometimes I feel like in order to get a price, you have to just follow just some stuff blindly, right? Like you just have to like kind of take a leap of faith, like find a reason to use a horse and just hope that like not just hope that it works out, but like hey, this horse is going to be a price or this horse like because of some reason. And the the 7 was probably my top pick in this race.
Mm.
Um but man, is this like a stretch. And I'll tell you what, I look at the optics plot and I'm like, I got to use this horse. Because this big old 7 up here in Q1, like, I don't know, man. Like, if he takes to the turf and he brings that speed over to the turf, I mean, he looks pretty good plotting out here on the optics plot. Um, you know, but like I said, like you're going off a horse trying turf for the first time, and if you look at his last race, um, I mean, it wasn't good. So you're really like I said, you're really stretching.
So your top choice was beat by 28 lengths last out.
It
My
wasn't
top choice
good.
was beat by 20. It was not good,
I mean,
but
there's not good and there's whoo. And then before
it's,
that, stumbled and lost the jock. I mean, that's a progression,
Well,
Josh.
here I'm going to step in and help
He
Josh
got
out a
better.
little
He got
bit.
but
better, right?
yeah,
You
and
know,
go ahead, Matthew.
yeah, I was going to say the only time this horse was down at this level before it finished second. Now there was a runaway winner that day that won by 11.5 lengths, but finished second at this maiden 48 level. The other thing I'll say is RY Squadron is actually has some useful turf pedigree underneath. The sire doesn't have a ton up top, but there's some at least something to suggest that maybe this horse takes to the turf in terms of the dam pedigree. So the 7 I wasn't against. It wasn't like a toss for me. I saw some things I definitely liked, getting Lasix for the first time as well. So there are some things in there with that 7 that I'm there with you, Josh. This is a very spready race, and the 7 will probably be included on my ticket.
Getting Lasix for the first time, and Mike Maker bringing the horse going long on the turf, like. Look, I'm not saying you bet the house on it, and like I'm not even saying that this is my only A in this race, but you know this is a horse that I'm not going to leave off any tickets because I see a couple things that that just kind of intrigue me, and like if you look at the running line last time out, right, Chase 4 wide weekend, and now he's getting Lasix for the first time. I mean, I don't know that to me like it's always a positive change. Mike Maker going long on the turf. I don't know. I felt pretty good about this one. I ended up using a bunch of others. I used the 4, who's going to be your favorite here, coming out of the Pletcher barn, which makes me just feel a little bit gross. Obviously, the 3, not an actual Pletcher horse trying turf for the first time. Not necessarily a ton of turf pedigree there. And then the 2, Barry the Builder for Rudy Rodriguez. And this is just another one where just not really a lot of turf pedigree on top. But at least, has run 2 turf races that actually look like turf races. Going to be getting a bunch of a class relief on this too. Probably my second choice in this spot. Dropping out of the maiden special weight, even though it was state bred into the claiming ranks. I thought the 2 made a bit of sense here, coming with at least his 2 best races coming on the turf, even though there's not a lot of turf pedigree there. So it's a bit of a spread race for me. But I don't know, Mark. This is I'm Matthew. I know you said that this is like your moneymaker,
Yeah.
but I mean this is Mark's home state, so hopefully he knows the state bred horses. So Mark,
Let's go.
Yeah,
Let's
no,
find something, Mark.
I think that we probably should start off with Barry the Builder, which is my top choice in this race. Obviously the Rudy Barn was not good at all winter at the Duct, but it seems like they're starting to perk up. And I realize this is not the turfiest pedigree, but I think Josh is making a case that the 7 is going to get out and get loose on the lead, but that's sort of dirt speed versus turf speed. And does this horse actually show the same type of early turn of foot on turf? We don't really know that. And I realize it's Maker going long, yada yada. I think there's a pretty good argument to me that Barry the Builder, the 2, actually does inherit the lead. You're getting Javi up. He tends to be much more aggressive early than some of these other jocks. I think there's a chance he gets out, gets on the lead, and then he plays kind of a catch me if you can sort of game here. He is, and Javi doesn't ride for Rudy, but when he does, he's a very high percentage with a very good ROI connections. I'm saying he's only like 13 or 15%, but he has like a $4 ROI. So these horses tend to get a little bit ignored at the board and have a much higher chance of winning than their odds would naturally imply. The 3 and the 4, Josh already talked about. I think they make some sense. So the kind of horses I want to get around, though, I think there's a lot of question marks there. Clearly a fake Pletcher, and coming and a horse coming out of the Pletcher barn, things that feel really kind of disgusting. The other horse that I want to talk about is a really big price, and that is the 9 horse, Michael Elise. And again, we're talking about Mike Maker. And Maker is somebody who this is kind of his bread and butter, taking horses, putting them on turf, and getting wins out of them. Maker going maiden special weight to maiden claim is a 30% win with a $2.58 ROI. Now I realize he's got other horses in here, but none of them are making that drop. This is the only horse that's a Maker horse. It's a first time in for a tag. The pedigree does not really scream turf. Honestly, it screams probably anything but turf. But Maker sees fit to kind of stick this horse in here first time for a tag. I don't know if this is just a horse he's trying to get out of his barn and hoping somebody would take off his hands. But at 20-1 with Kendrick, who he actually does fairly well. Kendrick is actually pretty okay up for Maker. I thought it was an interesting outsider in a race that I thought was pretty spready.
So to speak about how spready this race is, I'm going to talk about two horses we haven't even touched on yet. And and so my top pick is the number 8, actually. And this is Silent Running at 5-1 on the morning line for James Bond. And with Flavian aboard. And here's my logic behind this horse is this horse's running lines is a really interesting story. Debuts first 2 times on the dirt, doesn't really show much of anything, drops down in class to this exact same level, maiden 40 state restricted on the turf, nearly gets the job done. Finishes third by half length that day. What do? They actually step the horse up now and they run him in maiden special weight races, finishes second the next time out. They think so much of the horse, they put him in the New York Stallion Series $150,000 stakes race where he promptly finishes last because he's in over his head. Then they run him 2 more times at maiden special weights on the turf. He's turned in very consistent speed figures on the turf. Then they drop him down to a maiden claimer on the dirt. Now you're finally getting this horse back on the right surface at the right level. And so I think at 5-1, this horse actually makes a fair amount of sense. This horse can run back to what it did in April. I think this horse could potentially win. So this horse has some muddied running lines, and I just think it's an interesting progression that this horse has taken to get to that point. The other one that I'm a little interested in is the number 10 War Prince, 12-1 for Rob Atras. That barn is very, I know, hit or miss, runs very hot and cold. It's hot for long stretches of time and then goes cold a little bit. But this is a horse that depends on what sort of trip you're going to carve out from that 10 hole, but debuted obviously up at in maiden special weight territory on the turf, then goes on a really long layoff, 7-month layoff, comes back and was, for a race that was intended on the turf, but ultimately is goes off track, sloppy sealed track in this maiden claimer 40, and finishes third that day, halfway decent. Second time with Lasix, second time off the layoff, and you're getting back on clearly what Atras believes is this horse's best surface with Manny Franco aboard. 12-1, I might take a little bit of a shot there, but I do really like the 8. But listen, I agree with you guys. It's a super spread race because all the horses that you talked about when I looked at all were logical and made some amount of sense as well.
Yeah, one other horse, Josh, if you don't mind, that we probably should mention because obviously my love of Tom Morley, shows no bounds. And there's one horse in here that is not yet even in the field, and that is the 13 horse. Yeah. Mama Bandmate. This is a horse that obviously when you have races like this, these maiden 40s, somebody always scratches out of the field. You're assuming that some of these horses have issues. More than likely, you'll get a scratch, and this horse will draw out of the field. The horse is going to be drawn out in the parking lot. I don't love the draw, but I think Javi is already on a horse in here. And believe it or not, Tom Morley does go to T-Mac quite often. So
much to his detriment.
T-Mac actually has really good numbers for Morley in the past year. He's 14% with it's not a huge number of mounts, but he does pretty good stuff for Tom. I know he had a couple of wins for Tom up at Saratoga last year. And if you're a figures person, the races out of this 13, that 87 time form in that last race probably is one of the better ones in the field. It gets the class relief here, and I thought it was a sort of an interesting player. Appears to need a bit of a setup, but I always wonder with these sort of especially when you get these horses that are, a lot of these are dropping on maiden special weight ranks, dropping into maiden claims. You sometimes get some really wonky pace complexions. It does not look like it's going to be suicidal on the front end, but I wonder if all the jocks read that and there actually is a fair bit of pace. And T-Mac can kind of sit back, make one big long close, and can kind of get there on a horse that feels like this one's been due for a while. I don't think this horse is a monster, but I think it's an interesting sort of outsider in a really wide open field where none of us have really strong opinions.
I thought you were going to talk about the 5.
The Robbie Davis horse, huh?
Well, yeah, because it's got the best turf jock in the entire Davis family, including Trevor McCarthy. Um, and Jacqueline Davis, the
You're
boy.
not
So
necessarily wrong. I mean, Robbie Davis on turf is something that I sort of head scratch at. I wish that debut was better. Obviously, sometimes they just need a race.
I don't even know who Robbie Davis is. I'm just looking at Jackie Davis.
Well, Robbie Davis is Jackie Davis's dad,
Oh,
and also Dylan Davis's dad, and
hmm.
also yeah,
Katie
there's a
Davis
couple other
McCarthy's dad.
yeah,
Yeah.
America's dad, and yeah, there's a couple of them. No, Robbie Davis was a jock back in the day, and he's not a high percentage New York trainer, but he did get Jackie her first Saratoga win on one of his mounts last year, so that was pretty cool to see. I was there that day. Pretty interesting, interesting race. I don't hate the 5 honestly in here. Again, if you're saying this is a spread race. Maybe you take a horse that's very, very lightly raced. It's going to be a massive price and the kind of horse that can jump up and shock some people. Don't hate it at all.
I just know you love Jackie Davis on turf. So
No, turf is not where I like Jackie Davis, but
no.
no,
Hmm.
no, she's a
She's like
she's a
she's like plus $12 ROI on turf, right?
yeah, I know she is, but it's probably off from what, one win.
One win.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
okay,
definitely
I was
one
gonna
win.
say a bomb. Yeah.
she got
Oh,
one bomb home, but
look at Charles saying Dam's got 3 turf winners on 5 starters.
yeah. Oh, and again, those are the kind of horses you go after in a race where we're all saying we're going to spread. Well, if you're going to spread, you might as well find some prices to spread to. I've seen worse horses that you can get excited about.
Yeah. So to close out this pick 5, we got a nice state bred allowance going 6 furlongs on the inner turf here, and yeah, Mark, why don't you take this one first here?
You're making me go first again. Jeez, Josh. No, I mean this is another one of these. I think New York State bred races tend to be a little bit more wide open affairs. They tend to be races that you tend to get prices, and also I think some of these you tend to see horses sort of jump up and take wins. I'm not going to be super crazy creative in this race. The two horses that I liked the best were the 5-horse Sandrone, which is your inside drawn speed horse. Torres up. I don't know if this is a temp jock or they're going to put somebody else up on here, or maybe he does sort of retain the mount. But a lot of tactical speed. Ran probably a little too well in the last out. Didn't get beat by much in the last out at this level or at a very similar level. But my real concern there is you're going to get a short priced horse at 9-2 who's shown 1 for 10 lifetime. Although that one was on the surface, just a horse that doesn't necessarily like to get it done. And I think the horse that's probably my top choice in here is the 7-horse, 26 Black. Lightly raced horse, broke its maiden last out. Again, I'm taking on the sequence. I'm going to take 2 maiden winners last out as my top choices. So shows you there's definitely some. It's an interesting sequence. But Manny sticks on this one for Horatio. Horse that did break its maiden going this trip. On the Aqueduct turf. A horse that. I don't know how first time versus winners. The horse is going to have to do a little more passing than he did last out. But again, a lot of these are one for a big number type horses, and that lightly raced horse that Priscilla has more upside is pretty interesting. So 26 Black was my top choice in here.
What about you, Matt?
Yeah. So the 5 makes a lot of sense. I like the 5, but I ultimately went with a couple of prices in this one. I really like the number 9 Starquist, 10-1 on the morning line for John Kimmel. This is my type of horse, which is a horse that's been on the dirt and then perks up first time on a new surface. And now you're getting second time on that surface and you're getting a price. I think that's the most important thing. If this horse runs halfway decent, you're not going to get a price again.
Yeah.
So this is the time to get the price on the 9. So this is a horse that was clearly very well thought of too, like has been in nice races and, on the dirt, breaks his maiden first time out, then goes to the Sleepy Hollow against Arctic Arrogance, then runs in the Notebook, has run in 3 stakes races actually on the dirt. And then last time out goes to the turf and runs its best speed figure. And granted, finishes 4th that day, but runs a 78 buyer. And if you think that I'm usually of the opinion, second time on the surface, there's a little bit of progression. That horse is right there with where these other horses are, and you're getting a 10-1 price as opposed to a 3-1 or a 5-1. And so I'm willing to take a little bit of a shot on the 9 there, Starquist. The other horse that I will probably use in some capacity, not necessarily up top, but I am interested in the 3 Power Attack as well. This is a Sweezy horse who, again, I look at, especially in these state bred races, I kind of look at what other races these horses have been in. And this is a horse that was, again, very well intentioned, has, broke its maiden in a state restricted maiden special weight race on the turf, and then goes to 3 consecutive open company stakes races, goes against Web Slinger, who we just saw win at Churchill Downs, goes up against Nagarok, goes up against Sharp as Attack, runs against really, really nice horses. Granted, Sweezy's numbers off a long layoff are not particularly good, but this is a horse that's interesting to me. You get Rosario aboard, and I'm going to use this horse underneath probably, but at 8-1, I think this is a horse that can enrich your vertical exotics a little bit. But yeah, like Mark. I mean, my top 2 choices, we're together on the 5, and then I like the 9 as well.
Yeah, I actually did land on the favorite here, the 6 for John Kimmel and Irad Ortiz. Um, I just thought that this horse has been just, I don't know, this horse is coming in with a little bit of form. Wasn't in Kerry Bryan's barn. One broker maiden going 6 furlongs at Aqueduct, and finished second going 5, and then they went long, and that didn't work out. So I'm hoping getting back to 6. Might get this horse going back to their winning ways. Does have 2 runs over the surface, uh, or has 1 run on the inner and 1 on the outer going 6, and has some really nice figures, I think, going 6 here. So I think that this is a horse going back to 6 at Belmont, I think might be able to perk up a little bit. The price is kind of, meh. You're getting 3-1 here, but I thought that this might be one. This is a horse I'm going to have on my tickets. I think you make a good case for the 7 mark, as kind of being that lightly raced horse in this spot. Is still only 3. And was able to break her maiden pretty, or break his maiden, excuse me, pretty quickly. One horse that I kind of kept on looking at here, and is one I'm going to use here, is the 8 Cam and Duke. Now, this is another one I think where like you kind of gotta make excuses here. Obviously, went 6 furlongs here or at Aqueduct on the turf once, and kind of ducked in, lost the rider right away. But has since broken its maiden, going in maiden claim in 25, going 6 furlongs, very impressively. Going on the lead. So I don't know. I thought this is one that does have some early speed. Obviously, the question once again is going to be, what kind of speed do we got here, right? Like, um, is that dirt speed going to be able to translate? So if it does, I think that this might be your leader. But you do have, I think, the possibility for a little bit of contention. I think a horse like the 9 or the 10 also might sit a nice trip there with Starquist, and I forgot the 10's the MTO, so never mind about the 10. But yeah, I'm probably just going to use the 8 and the 6. I might use a little bit of the 10 here, just kind of at kind of a big price on the cutback here. But I don't know. I thought this was a tough race. There's a if half these horses or more win this race, like I'm not going to be surprised. But I don't think that you can. I thought that I was going to be spreading pretty big the race before this, so I kind of had a hard time trying to go more than 2 deep here. So I'm kind of going to use a chalk here, the 6, and then I'm going to use the price in the 8 horse Cam and Duke.
So 2 stats for you, Josh. Jimmy Reinerson is 0 for 21 going dirt to turf and 0 for 16 in last year in turf sprints on your 8 horse. So you're getting in.
So he's going to be 20 to
He's
1.
due,
So
baby. He's due.
he's
There we
due,
go.
and you're getting the appropriate price. And also, it says a lot about this race that the favorite, the 6 at 3 to 1, is running for a 3% trainer this year, who's 1 for 32, which is, boy, that is a stat. So no, I mean, I mean, if you like either one of them, you do you. But boy, neither one of them are horses that I have any interest at all. But I will say, Josh, I don't hate your. I think you said the 9, right? I don't hate that horse. So
Yeah, I like that horse too. That's
yeah,
a good one. We like the
yep,
9.
yeah.
There's something there because like I said, the cutback makes sense for him too, from going from a mile and a 16th to 6, and he's going to be kind of right behind that pace, I would imagine.
Yep.
And so I think the distance cutback makes sense. That's where his best races were, on dirt as well, sprinting. And so I think there's something to like there with that 9. That was one where I think David was generally right on in this race, but that was one where I was like, 10 to 1. That seems a little high for this horse. And that's one where I could imagine people taking a little bit of money for this one.
Yeah.
But
I realize there's a lot of 1 for a million horses in here. The one horse that nobody mentioned that I'm actually a little surprised at is this 4-horse King Moon Racer. You're getting George Weaver, you're getting Javi getting up for Weaver, which has historically been really good connections. Weaver's split us pretty well off the longer layoffs. He's 16% off the greater than 180 days. There's no monsters in this race. This is a pretty damn soft field, and this is probably the kind of field you want to be returning in. I figured somebody would try to make an argument for this 4. It runs back to that last out race, which was a losing effort by 4 lengths. Probably is actually a massive player in here.
Yeah. And one of the things I do typically like is looking at, I mentioned this with regards to the 3, but looking at horses that have run against open company and now dropping in state restricted races. This horse has a ton of open company races to his credit. So makes a lot of sense in that regard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
our ticket's going to be worth like $800 in this sequence.
Yeah. We do not have a lot of common horses, so this is going to be tough. But I know Mark did point out that the grade 3 Run Happy is right after this. Yeah. I don't necessarily want to spend a ton of time on it because I literally had no clue what to do in this race. But Matt, tough. I don't know if you had any kind of closing thoughts on this race here, the other graded stakes on the card.
I'll probably use Baron, the 2. Logical 9 for 10 in the exacta at this distance, 2 for 2 at Belmont. I'm very skeptical of Park's horses generally, even though I'm a native Pennsylvanian.
That's why you're skeptical of them.
That is exactly why I'm skeptical of Park's horses. But listen, he's taken his road in the show for Butch Reed. He gets Irad aboard. It makes a lot of sense. The 3 I don't trust at all. That's purely a Park's horse. That the one time it ran at Delaware Park, it finished a distance 5th. So that tells you everything you need to know, I think. But I think Mr. Phil, I should say, is a little interesting in the as the 6 horse, but it may be a little bit of a price. But yeah, Baron was my top choice in this one. And Mark, I don't know where you're going in the Run Happy.
Yeah, pretty similar to you, Matt. I didn't hate Twisted Ride as much as you did. Horses, won 4 in a row, and they seem to have sort of figured out what this one is doing. Horse that wins 50% of its races must be somewhat okay. I think Baron is my top choice in here as well. It's not because I love the horse; it's just because I don't really love the rest of them. And if you're a sort of form cycle person, every other type, Baron is kind of your classic every other type horse. This should be the every. Horse likes the distance, and horse really likes Belmont. So, if you get anywhere near that 5 to 2, the horse is definitely win bettable. But I don't know, and I know the couple people in chat talking Candyman Rocket. I mean, I had this race as 2, 3, and 4, and I thought Candyman Rocket makes a ton of sense here. This is a horse getting, I would imagine, a fair bit of class relief. I know it's a G3 to a G3, but I don't think there's as much.
Skelly's really good. Skelly's really good.
Exactly, like a Skelly Tano Twist, also a very very good horse. I think there's I realize Tejano Twist didn't win this past weekend, but but it was very well thought of in that race. So that was a pretty classy race, and I think they took, the horse was on a three race win streak, and then they went a little over their head. And I think this is a more realistic placing, although the class level is the same. That Count Fleet was just kind of loaded this year, so I thought Candyman Rocket was super usable in this spot as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the fake Parks horse. So
I
like the fake.
just my thing about Parks horses is until they prove it outside of Parks, I just have a hard time trusting them. And that's my only, because I agree with you, Mark. Like 4 in a row, like that. I don't care where you're winning. If you win 4 races in a row, that's impressive. But I just until I see it at a track outside of Parks, I'm always skeptical.
Yeah, and Baron also a dirty Parks horse, but he is 2 for 2 at Belmont.
Right.
So
yeah, no, he can take a show on the road a little bit better, and I'm like, okay, I can trust that.
Cool. I think that's going to do it for us. Matthew, thank you so much for hopping on with us while Caleb was out of town. Where can people find you?
Well, they can find me on Twitter at the handle @FailDeMenace. That is where you'll find all of my content. I got Capping the Card dropping tomorrow morning, where I go races 1 through 11 with my top pick, my top value play for the Belmont card on Saturday. And then I also have a Victoria Mile preview dropping. Yes, right. We're going over to Japan. The return of Sadashi. I bring on Alex Henry, who's, if anybody knows anything about Japanese racing, she's super sharp. And so she and I talk that race and the return of the Great White Wonder, Sadashi. So that should be a lot of fun.
I had asked my buddy to send me a Sodashi plushie, but I don't think he could find it. So I got a gold ship one instead.
So what's interesting, what Alex told me that I didn't realize until this afternoon when I recorded with her, was she has a Sadashi plushie. So maybe you should hit her up. Maybe she has more than one. But the other thing is, it's the JRA, the Japanese Racing Association, is the one that makes all of this stuff. It's not crazy. Some knockoff. Yep. It's not some like third-party vendor. It's not the connections, #Rich Strike. It is JRA that makes all of these products, like the plushies, the pillows, the T-shirts. They make for all of these horses. And it's like, wow, look at what a centralized governing body can do to grow the sport of racing. It's just crazy.
Could you imagine Ellis over there, like, sewing together a plushie for Flightline? Yeah. Thank you guys for hanging out. Obviously, you can catch us at ontherwronglead.com, at @wrong_lead on Twitter. We got all of our Twitter handles here. I am so tired, and I have no energy left. I hope you guys have a great weekend. See you later.
Peace.